The wind howled like a vengeful spirit through the jagged peaks of the Andes, whipping snow into a blinding frenzy that erased the wild view and arm's reach. Elena trudged onward, her boots sinking into the fresh powder with each labor step. She had come here seeking solace, a escape from the wreckage of her life back in the bustling streets of Buenos Aires. Her last relationship had crumbled under the weight of betrayal. Her fiancé, an ambitious Galeone, had not only stolen her ideas, but paid the mess his own, leaving her stalled in a creative drought that mirrored the barren winter landscape on her at 28. Elena was a nomadic soul, her backpack heavy with sketchbooks and charcoals, her heart light without the anchors of commitment. She had always found inspiration in nature's raw beauty, but this hike was different. It was a deliberate plunge into isolation, a test of her resilience. The trail maps had promised breathtaking vistas of snow-capped summits and hidden valleys, but the weather pan had found, no useless without signal, had failed to predict this month's storm. Dark clouds had rolled in swiftly, turning a crisp afternoon into a frozen nightmare. Her fingers, numb despite the thick gloves, clutched the straps of her pack as she pushed forward. The cold seeped through her layers, an insidious teeth stealing her warmth breath by breath. Hypothermia's early whispers began, a shiver that wouldn't stop, a fog clouding her thoughts. Just a little further, she muttered to herself, her voice swallowed by the gale. But the pet had vanished under the drifts, and disorientation set in like a predator circling its prey. Trees loomed as shadows giants, their branches clawing at the sky. Panic flickered in her chest had she veered off course? The Andes were unforgiving. Stories of lost hikers filled the local lore. Their fates sealed the avalanche soaring las white voids then. Through the swelling haze, a faint outline emerged, a small cabin. Its wooden frame battered but defiant against the elements. Smoke curled from the chimney, a beacon of life in the desolation. Elena's heart surged with desperate hope. She stumbled toward it, her legs heavy as lead, collapsing against the door with a thud. "Help! Por favor," she cried, pounding with what strength remained. The wood vibrated under her fists, but silence sensed it fast, amplifying her fear. Was it abandoned? Or was occupied by someone who wouldn't open to a stranger? Inside, Mateo stood from his armchair by the fire. At 35, he was a man carved from the mountains themselves, broad-shouldered, with weathered skin and a shadowed big grief. On the renowned guide leading thrill seekers through treacherous passes. He had retreated here after the accident that claimed his wife. Sofia 2 years ago, a sudden crabs had swallowed her during a climb, and Mateo's guilt had buried him alive. He blamed himself for not seeing the signs, for pushing too far. No, he lived in self-imposed exile, chopping wood, reading faded books, and avoiding the wealth that had taken everything. Senakin persisted, insistent and weak. Mateo's instincts were red within him. Survival in these parts meant caution, but humanity demanded response. With a sigh that echoed his reluctance, he rose, grabbing a lantern. Peering through the frosted window, he saw her, a huddled figure, face pale as snow, lips thin blue. Hypothermia, he recognized instantly. Kissing under his breath, he unbolted the door, the blast of cold air, dashing in like an unwelcome guest, coming, quickly, he growled in Spanish, his voice rough from disuse. He pulled her inside, slamming the door against the storm's fury. Elena collapsed onto the threshold, her body trembling uncontrollably. The cabin's warmth enveloped her like a hesitant embrace, logs crackling in the stone fireplace, the scent of pine and stool lingering in the air. Mateo knelt, assessing her condition with practiced efficiency. "You're half frozen. Sit by the fire." As she peeled off her sudden jacket, gratitude mixed with weariness in her eyes. "WHO was this stranger, this guardian of the wilderness?" Mateo, pouring hot tea from a kettle, felt as though he hadn't in years, a spark of concern piercing his isolation. Little did they know, this sector refuge from the cold would ignite something deeper. A fire that would do not just bodies, but souls long encased in ice. The cabin's interior was a haven of rustic simplicity, a stark contrast to the chaotic blizzard raging outside. Flickering firelight danced across wooden beams hewn from local pines, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of solitude. A worn leather chair, set before the hearth, flanked by shelves crammed with dog-eared books on mountaineering and Indian folklore. They carried the aroma of burning logs, mixed with the faint, comforting scent of herbal tea, stepping on a cast-iron stove. Elena, still shivering despite the warmth enveloping her like a reluctant blanket, peeled off her sodden boots and socks, her toes prickling painfully as exhalation returned. Mateo, ever the pragmatic host, handed her a bundle of dry clothes, oversized flannel shirt, wool pants, and thick socks that belonged to his late wife, though he didn't mention that. Changing the back room, he muttered, pointing to a curtained alcove, his voice gruff but not unkind. Elena nodded gratefully, her teeth chattering as she retreated. The room was sparse, a single bed with a quilt patch from faded fabrics, a small window frosted over, and the mirror reflecting her disheveled state, cheeks flushed from the cold. Dark hair matted with snow melt. She dressed quickly, the clothes hanging loosely on her slender frame. That they were warm, infused with a subtle scent of pine and smoke that felt oddly intimate. Imagine, she found Mateo stuck in the fire, his broad back turned to her. It was taller than she'd realized, with clasped hands that moved with efficient grace, born from years navigating treacherous stains, sit and instructed, gesture to a stool near the flames. A ladle steaming soup from a pot, potato and quinoa stew, hearty and spiced with ají peppers, into a clay bowl, placing it before her with a hunk of crusty bread. Elena wrapped her hands around the bowl, her hips dipping into her palms like a lifeline. She ate slowly at first, then ravenously, senishment chasing away the fog of exhaustion. Between bites, awkward silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of logs and the wind's mournful howl against the shadows. Thank you, she said finally, her Spanish accent with the lilt of an Argentina. I don't know what would have happened if. Her voice trailed off, soft-spoken peril, hanging in the air. Mateo shrugged, settling into his armchair with a magapti. You'd have frozen. Happens too often up here. He says, a deep hazel flecked with gold flickered toward her briefly before returning to the fire. It wasn't one for small talk. Isolation had honed his words to essentials. But curiosity nodded him. Why was a city girl like her out here alone? What brings you to these mountains? Not many hikes solo in winter. Elena hesitated, stirring her soup. I'm an artist. Sketch landscapes, forgotten places. Thought then this would inspire me. Clear my head after. Some bad signs. She glanced at him, noting the lines etched down his mouth, the subtle tension in his jaw. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the peaks themselves. And you? You live here full-time? Guide. Or said to be. Mateo's response was clear, but there was a flicker in his expression that cried perhaps. Stared into the flames, me se fascinum bitten. Sofia had left this cabin. It was the retreat between expeditions. No, it was his prison. Opening the door to this stranger felt like a betrayal of his vow to Salatot. Yet her presence did something dormant. A reluctant spark of human connection as the evening wore on. The storm intensified, rattling the windows like an insistent intruder. They shared more tentative words. Elena spoke of her nomadic life, drifting from galley to galley, her heart a shield against vulnerability. Mateo admitted the mountains where his escape to, though he revealed little else. Tension simmered beneath the surface, her gratitude clashing with his weariness, like embers waiting for kindling. Yet, in the glow of the fire, an uneasy sanctuary formed a fragile bridge between two wounded souls. Little did they know, this short warmth was the first thread in a tapestry of deep flames. The storm showed no signs of relenting, its fury transforming the outside world into an impenetrable wall of bite. They bled into one another inside Mateo's cabin, the relentless howl whined against the ice, a constant reminder of their isolation. The initial awkwardness between Elena and Mateo had softened into a tentative rhythm, shared meals by the fire. Brief exchanges about the weather or the mountains. Batten and the cantaban spoken stories lingered, thick as the smoke curling from the chimney. With no escape possible, time stretched, forcing them into each other's company. And it was in these quiet hours that the whispers of the pest began to surface. Elena, restless from confinement, explored the cabin's nooks while Mateo chopped more wood outside during a brief lull. SHWASNT prime, or so she told herself. Curiosity was an artist's curse. On a dusty shelf above the mantel, tucked behind the stack of yellow-wet maps, she found a small wooden box. Inside were faded photographs that I just kept from agent handling. The first one caught her breath, a woman with sun-kissed skin and a radiant smile. Arms wrapped around Mateo and a sunlit peak. They looked invincible, young and in love, Sandy sprawling behind them like a conquered kingdom. More photos followed, climbing expeditions, campfires under starry skies, intimate moments frozen intimate. The woman says, bright and adventurous, mirrored the spirit. Elena once saw in herself before betrayal dignity. She didn't hear Mateo return until the door creaked open. A gust of cold air announcing him. A froze in the threshold, snow dusting his shoulders, his face paling as he saw the open bags in her hands. Those aren't for you, said his voice low in that with pain, but not anger. He set down the eggs with a thud. Wiping his hands and his pants as he approached. Elena stammered an apology, closing the box quickly, but the damage, or perhaps the opening, was done. She was your wife, she asked softly, placing it back on the shelf. Mateo nodded, sinking into his armchair with a heavy sigh. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows that danced across his features, highlighting the grief etched there. Sofia Mehmet, the name escaping like a lump held breath. For the first time, he opened up, albeit haltingly. Spoke up their life together, how they met on a guiding trip, banded over a shared lap for the mountains, Rapaware. Sofia was fearless, a climber who pushed boundaries, and Mateo his steadfast partner. But 2 years ago, during a routine ascent, a hidden crevice had given way. She fell, and though he tried to save her, the rope snapped under the strain. He should have checked it twice. He should have turned back when the weather shifted, he confessed, his voice cracking. Guilt had consumed him since, driving him to the self-imposed exile, where the mountains both punished and protected him. Elena listened, her heart aching in recognition. As he spoke, she felt compelled to share her own scars, sweat stumbling out in the fire's warm glow. I know about loss, in a way, she said, drawing her knees upon the stool. Her ex, Javier, hadn't died, but he'd killed something in her. A galley on a WH promised to wealth, stole her sketches, claimed them as his collaborations, and left her humiliated in the art world she loved. It shattered my trust, made me run from people, from roots. That's why I'm here, sketching ghosts in the snow. Her vulnerability hung in the air, and exposed. In that moment, their sharp pain bridges a gap between strangers. Mateos Smedges, softer now, se guardad walls cracking. Erich for a poke, stains embes, which loud bright, mirroring the unexpected intimacy in between them. Left even slipped in the right chacal from Mateo about Sophia's tavernas, echoed the Elena's anecdote of Javier's pretentious art critics. The storm outside raged on, but inside, vulnerability intertwined like Venus, creating a warmth that went beyond the heart. It was a first true connection, embes of understanding, that hinted at deep fires, yet to ignite, the storm's grip on the Andes began to loosen after 3 interminable days. But the snowdrifts piled high against the cabin door, and the pantry shelves grew bare with each meal. Supplies were dwindling, flags half empty, canned goods rationed, and firewood stakes alarmingly low. Mateo, ever the survivalist, knew they couldn't wait for a full thaw. We go out today, he announced, obviamente breakfast about meal and dried berries. His tone leaving no room for debate. Elena, her strength returning after the initial ordeal, felt a mix of apprehension and excitement. The cabin had become a cocoon of short stories, but the outside world beckoned. Brandon forgiving, vandal delays, Mateo's spare parkas wallow in her frame. Woolheads pulled low, they stepped into the crisp of the med. Say a bit sharply, but the sun peeked through ragged clouds, casting a diamond sparkle over the fresh blanket of snow. Mateo led the way, his snowshoes crunching a path, while Elena followed, her own pair clumsily strapped on. Their first task, chopping wood from a nearby stand-up hardy pines, branches bowed under the weight of ice. Mateo handed her next, its handle words moved from years abuse. A swing from the hips, not the arms, e instructed, demonstrating with a powerful chop that sent splinters flying. Elena mimicked him, her strikes tentative at first, but gaining confidence as wood chips accumulated. Left escaped her when she missed entirely, embedding the blade in the snow. Mateo cracked at her smile, the corners of his scrinkling. Not bad for a city artist. As a pile grew, Mateo transitioned to teaching survival basics, lessons born from his guiding days. They knelt in the snow, and he showed her how to build a fire starter from birch bark and flint, his calloused fingers guiding his. Friction is key, except their breaths mingling in white puffs. Then came not tying luminescent lobe, which is essential for securing loads or makeshift shelters. His hands brushed as he adjusted her grip on the rope, a fleeting touch that sent an unexpected warmth through her veins, defying the chill. Elena's pulse weakened. Was it altitude or something more? Mateo met his briefly, a flick of awareness passing between them before he cleared his throat and looked away with what vandal then slammed over their shoulders. They pressed on to hand for food. Mateo carried a rifle, scanning for signs of Indian wildlife, perhaps a vizcacha or wild hare that hadn't burrowed too deep. Elena, armed with a slingshot he'd fashioned, felt the thrill of the hunt mingle with primal fear. Treks that at the snow, leading them upslope toward the ridge. But the mountains were treacherous. A distant rumble warned of instability. Suddenly, the ground trembled a loose snowpack, giving way into a mine avalanche, cascading toward them like a white wave dawn. Mateo shouted, grabbing Elena's arm and pulling her behind the boulder. They had all as the snow roared past, mere feet away, burying their path in fresh debris. Adrenaline surged through them, hearts pounding in unison. When the dust settled, Mateo checked her over, his hands on her shoulders, searching for injury. "You okay?" asked, voice husky with concern. Elena nodded, breathless, her hand instinctively covering his. In the near miss, reliance deepened, she on his expertise, on her unexpected resilience. The danger stripped away pretenses, revealing attraction, the way his protective stance made her feel safe. The sparking eyes that reminded him of life's vitality. Back at the cabin, unloading their haul, a few rebats nerden goods stacked high, Sean met with unspoken energy. The shark pearl had ignited the first true sparks, a budding attraction flickering like the fire they'd revealed that night. What began as survival was evolving, pulling them closer in the vast, isolating wilderness. The days in the cabin stretched on, the storm's remnants leaving a heavy blanket of snow that confined Elena and Mateo to their shared sanctuary. With survival tests completed, the wood chopped, meals prepared, boredom crept in like a subtle fog, settling over the rustic space. The fire remained their constant companion, its flames leaping in the heart, casting a golden hue that softened the edges of isolation. Elena, ever the artist, felt the itching her fingers, the pull-up creation that had eluded her for months. Her sketchbook, salvaged from her backpack and dried by the fire, lay open on the wooden table, its blank pages a silent challenge. "I need to draw," she announced one evening, her voice cutting through the quiet crackle of logs. Mateo glanced up, fragment in a torn glove, his brow furrowing in mild surprise. "Draw what? The walls?" Elena smiled, a spark of mischief in her eyes. "You, actually. Be the derelict. It had captured the essence of this place, the warmth amidst the cold." Mateo hesitated, his reclusive nature recoiling at the idea of being the subject. HAWASNTUZ to scrutiny. Since Sophia's death, he'd hidden his depths behind a facade of stoicism. But Elena's enthusiasm was infectious, her play street the gratitude that had woven them close. "Fine," he grumbled, shifting in his armchair, "but make it quick." He paused reluctantly, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the flames as if they held answers to unspoken questions. Elena settled across from him, charcoal in hand, her strokes tentative at first, tracing the strong lines up his jaw. The subtle scar on his cheek from along the fall. The way shadows played across his hazels as she walked, the sketchy bulb, layer by layer. She captured not just his physical form, the broad shoulders honed by mountain life. The top's dark hair flecked with premature gray, but the hidden depth beneath, the quiet sorrow in his posture, the flicker of resilience in his expression, the derelict danced, illuminating contours that revealed a man who had loved fiercely and lost profoundly. Mateo watched her from the corner of his eye, intrigued despite himself. No one had looked at him this way since Sofia, not with such intent focus that peeled back layers. When Elena finally turned the page toward him, he leaned forward, breath-catching. The drawing was raw, intimate, a portrait that made him feel seen, not as a broken guide, but as a soul with stories etched into his being. "It me, Mehmet," a vulnerability cracking his voice. For the first time in years, the weight of his isolation lifted slightly, like a cracking glacial ice, allowing light through in return. Mateo felt compelled to give something back to bridge the artistic exchange. As the night deepened, he shared stories of ancient Indian legends, tales passed down from indigenous guides he'd known. He spoke of Inti, the sun god Who chased away the cold with his golden rays. Of Pachamama, the mother, Who nurtured life from barren peaks. His voice, deep and rhythmic, wove midst of star-crossed laves tending to constellations of spirits in the wind that guarded los trebales. Elena listened, entranced, her sketchbook filling with new inspirations, a quick doodles of mythical figures amidst snow landscapes infused with the passion of his narratives. These stories reignited her creative fire, breaking through the black that Javier's betrayal had imposed. Her art flashed in those pages brimming with vibrant energy that mirrored the growing admiration between them. Mutual respect bloomed like wildflowers after a thaw. Elena admired Mateo's quiet wisdom, the way his tales connected him to the land's soul. Mateo, in turn, saw in her drawings a mirror to his own healing, fanning flames of connection that went beyond survival. Se quedaban on the mere refuge, no pulsed with creative synergy, hinting at deep affections waiting to ignite. The evening settled over the cabin like a heavy shroud. The storm's echoes fading into a deceptive calm outside. Inside, the fire had burned low, its embers glowing faintly as Elena and Mateo shared a simple dinner of stewed rabbit and flatbread. Their conversation light, but laced with the undercurrents of their growing bond. The own met with unspoken tension, the kind that builds from sharp glances and accidental touches during the day's activities. As night deepened, the wine picked up again, rattling the shattes, but it was the sudden flicker of the cabin's single bulb, out by a temperamental generator that heralded change. With a pop in the wine, the light plunging the space into inky blackness. Elena gasped, her hand instinctively reaching out in the void. "What happened?" she whispered, her voice small against the darkness. Mateo, unfazed by such mountain winds, rummaged in a drawer, his movements sure from memory. Generated sought probably snow on the lines. Happened often. Struck a match, its flare illuminating his face in stark relief, and lit a cluster of candles on the table. The soft, golden light bloomed, casting waving shadows that danced across the walls like restless spirits. The cabin transformed. What was once a practical refuge now felt intimate, almost sacred. The flames reflecting in their eyes as they sat closer than before. With no distractions, no books to read by the night, no chores to fill the silence, the conversation turned inward, drawn by secondless hypnotic glow. Mateo poured the michamagave tea, the steam rising like whispers. Stared into his cup, the weight of his confessions pressing. "You know about Sofia," he began, his voice low and gravelly. "But I haven't told you everything. After she died, is war of it all guiding people, love. It heads too much. Feels like tempting fate again." His fingers tightened down the Mac, knuckles bite. He confessed his deepest fear, that open in his heart would invite more loss, that the mountains had already taken enough. Segil still nodded him, a constant shadow, making him question if he deserved happiness. Elena listened, second the light softening her features, her own vulnerability stinging response. She set him back down, her hand brushing his arm alleviate that's this time. I get it, she admitted softly, her eyes meeting his with unflinching honesty. My wanderlust. It's not just adventure. It's running. From Javier, from anyone who might hate me again. Commitment scares me because it means staying, risking it all. I'd build walls with my art, my travels, but here. With you, her voice trailed, thick with emotion. She revealed how her nomadic life was a shield, a way to avoid the roads that could tangle and break her. Yet, in this cabin, those defenses were crumbling, replaced by a pull she couldn't ignore, so what's hand between them, tender and dry, se charged with vulnerability. Seconds flicked, as if mirroring the quickening of their pulses. Mateo's gaze softened, segared that man, giving way to one yearning for connection. He reached out, his hand caught in his, callous rough against his skin, but gentle in intent. Maybe we're both tired of running, Mehmet. Elena leaned in, the space closing, their breaths mingling. The kiss was hesitant at first, a rush of lips, tentative and exploring, like testing fragile eyes. But it deepened, fueled by the pent-up emotions of their isolation, igniting a fire that spread through them, warm and insistent. Hearts ablaze, they pulled back, only to gaze at each other. The midnight confession sealing a bond that transcended the storm. In that candlelit moment, fears dissolved into possibility, the darkness outside forgotten as in a flames roared to life. The storm's fury finally abated, the relentless winds giving way to a crisp, silent dawn that painted the Andes in hues of pink and gold. Sunlight pierced through the cabin's frosted windows, melting the icicles that had framed their wall-like prison bars. For the first time in days, the outside beckoned the pet's imagine from no drifts, but some echo in insevelis below. Elena and Mateo stepped out together, the fresh air invigorating yet placed with a subtle shift. Their refuge that had bound them was cracking open, exposing their budding connection to the harsh light of reality. Elena's phone, dormant in her backpack since the blizzard hit, buzzed to life as signal bars flickered back. She glanced at it absent-mindedly while helping Mateo clear the porch, but the influx of notifications halted her. Messages piled up, missed calls from friends in Buenos Aires, daily inquiries about her stalled exhibitions, and, most harrowingly, a voicemail from Javier, her ex. Elena, we need to talk. Se shows ahead your ideas, I mean. Come back his voice, smooth and manipulative as ever, stirred a cocktail of anger and nostalgia. She deleted it quickly, but not before Mateo noticed her felt brow. The way her fingers tightened down the device inside as they warmed by the fire with coffee. The phone rang again. Elena answered, her tone clipped. Javier, not now. Mateo's head snapped up from stalking the logs, his expression darkening like getting clouds. He overhead snipped Javier's pleading, references to our work, unfinished business, when she hung up, silence stretched out between them. WHO was dead. Mateo's, his voice even batted with something raw. Elena explained briefly, her ex, the betrayal, the Ardwell pulling her back. But Mateo's mind raced to West Cassie assumptions, his past losses fueling insecurity. Sofia had been his Senke, and now this strangest old flame into that, threatening the fragile warmth that built jealousy flared like a spark on dry tinder. So, that's it, a call from the city, and you're gone? Mateo accused, standing abruptly, his McClatey on the table. He paced a small space, was stumbling out, how he'd let her in, shared his grief, only for her to be tethered to a life that didn't include him. This was just a pit stop for you, wasn't it? Shelter from the storm, nothing more. Elena recoiled, head flashing in her eyes. You think that's all this is? I've opened up to Mateo. But I can't ignore my wild forever. The argument escalated, voices rising amid the crackling fire. She defended her independence, the nomadic spirit that had led her here. Accounted with his fear of abandonment, the cabin symbolizing his guarded heart, yet beneath the heat, deeper truths emerged. They confronted the core question, was this connection a fleeting refuge, born of isolation, or something worth fighting for? Elena admitted the pull up her old life scared her, tempting her to run as always. Mateo confessed his jealousy stemmed from vulnerability. He'd felt alive again with her, terrified of losing that spark. Tears welled as they said, the fight draining into exhaustion. In a pivotal moment, Elena reached for his hand. I don't want to go back to empty sketches and lonely trails. But we have to choose this, together. Mateo pulled her closer. They embraced a silent vow to navigate the trials ahead, As rescuers distant calls echoed from the valley, snowmobiles approaching to check on remote wells, their hearts tightened on the edge. The storm had cleared, but the real tempest was within. Testing if their ignited fire could endure the thaw of reality, Cezanne hung low in the Indian sky. Casting long shadows over the thawing landscape as Elena and Mateo prepared for their trek. Searching from the previous day had forged the tentative resolve they would extend their time together, delaying Elena's inevitable return to the world below. Rescuers had come and gone, confirming the trails were passable, but the perfect lingering storm damaged to vice a lot. Mateo suggested a short journey to a hidden hot spring he knew. A secret oasis tucked in a volcanic crevasse, fed by geothermal waters that bubbled eternally warm amid the chill. It's not far, I said, pecking a rucksack with provisions, bread, cheese, a flask of wine, and blankets. Elena, her artist's eye alight with anticipation, agreed eagerly. This was more than an outing. It was a deliberate step into the unknown, testing if their cavern-born passion could thrive beyond its walls the day set out at midday. Snowshoes traded for steady boots as the path wound upward through pine groves dusted with melting frost. Sea was crisp, scented with death awakening from winter's grasp. Mateo led his strides confident, pointing out landmarks, a twisted rock formation resembling a condor's wing, a stream trickling to life. Elena followed, sketching quick impressions in a packed notebook. The play of light on snow, Mateo's silhouette against the peaks. Conversation flowed easily now, laced with the intimacy of their midnight kiss. They spoke of dreams defied, her desire to exhibit art that captured the soul of places like this. His longing to guide again, sharing the mountain's wonders without the shadow of loss. As dusk approached, they reached the hot spring, a steaming pool nestled in a natural basin. Surrounded by moss-covered boulders and overlooked by a canopy of stars emerging in the twilight. Vapor rose like ethereal spirits, the water surface rippling invitingly. They stripped down in the fading light, vulnerability heightened in the moment. Slipping into the warmth, the contrast to the cool air sent shivers of delight through them. Amid the steaming waters, they drew closer, bodies buoyant and free. Left echoed as they splashed, tension dissolving into tenderness. Mateo's hands traced her skin, igniting sparks that mirrored the celestial display above. Under starry skies, they explored their growing passion, kisses deepening, embraces agent yet gentle, the hot spring a cradle for their desires. Time suspended, the well reduced to the rhythm of their breaths and the geothermal hum beneath. But as they lay ahead of the wet, wrapped in blankets, by a small fire Mateo built. Elena's curious attested. Elie, while pecking, she glimpsed the weather gently in the cabin. Tucked in a drawer, with maps marked by Sophia's hand. What's the story behind those old expedition notes? She asked, her head on his shoulder. Mateo hesitated, the stars reflecting in his eyes. He revealed the secret. Sophia hadn't just been a climber. She'd been obsessed with the lost in Entreche. Rumors of gold artifacts hidden in remote caves, clues pieced from ancient texts and local legends. The cabin held fragments, sketches, coordinates, from her final, unfinished quest. She believed it was more than riches. A cultural legacy, a sad voiced with emotion. Elena's eyes widened. As an artist drawn to forgotten histories, decided layers to their bond amidst the intertwining past and present, the revelation deepened their connection, transforming the trek into a pivotal journey. As they returned on the moonlight, hand in hand, the unknown no longer daunted the invited, promising adventures beyond survival. Back at the cabin, Sea felt charged with the residue of their hot spring idol. The steaming stars still lingering in their memories like a vivid dream. The trek back had been silent but companionable, hence intertwined as they navigated the towing paths, the Andes whispering promises of renewal. But as they crested the final reach, the sight relocated the illusion, rescue snowmobiles that at the valley, rejected stark against the white expanse. Wet heads spread up stranded hikers, and the team from the nearby village had mobilized, their engines humming like an unwelcome intrusion. Mateo tensed, his grip on Elena's hand tightening. They're here for you, he said quietly, the words heavy with implication inside. The cabin's warmth welcomed them, but the sanctuary now felt precarious. Elena unpacked her sketchbook, fingers tracing the new drawings, inspired by Sophia's general clues, cryptic symbols of ancient pets, hidden caves etched in charcoal. Her phone, fully charged now, buzzed incessantly. More messages from Javier, agent emails from Belize, demanding her return for an upcoming show. The nomadic life she cherished called her back exhibitions in Buenos Aires, commissions in Santiago, the freedom of uncharted trails. Yet, Mateo's presence anchored her, his quiet strength a counterweight to the chaos. Doubt flickered like dying embers. Was this love real, or a product of isolation? Could she trade her wandering for roots in these unforgiving peaks? The rescue snagged soon after, their lead a belly man named Carlos, a former colleague of Mateo's. Señorita, we've been searching. The roads are clear. We can escort you down. Elena hesitated, glancing at Mateo. Who busied himself with Sophia, his back rigid. She thanked them politely, claiming she needed one more day to get the headings. As they departed, Pramas interitened them, the doors closing echoed like a finality. Alone again, the pressure boiled over. Mateo 10, stormy. Go, then, back to your cities, your ex. This was never your wealth. His voice cracked, jealousy and fear mingling with chants of Sophia's love replaying, amplified the Elena's indecision. Elena flared in response, slamming her sketchbook down. You think it's that easy? I poured my heart into this lintus. But I can't just abandon everything. My earth, my life. It's WHOM. Second confrontation hit at words flying like sparks, accusations of cowardice, defenses of independence. Mateo admitted his of vulnerability, how opening up to her opened old wounds. I thought we had something worth staying for, shouted, pacing the room. Elena counted with her own fears, the betrayal that made commitment a cage, the wanderlust that defined her. Their streamed emotions peaked, the cabin's walls seeming to close in. Inside of the mess, deep truths emerged. Collapsing into the armchair, Mateo pulled her closer, his voice softening. I don't want to lose you, Elena. Sofia stretched. It's not just gold. It's a legacy, a Jenny. Let's search for it together. Leave the past behind, build something new. The proposal hung in the air. Symbolic a commitment to face uncertainties united, blending her artistry with his knowledge of the mountains. Elena's heart swelled. THISWASNT confinement, bad partnership. She nodded, sealing it with a kiss, resolve igniting like a rekindled flame. As night fell, they poured over the channel, planning their quest, doubts giving way to shared purpose.